hitting the road this summer to hear directly from Albertans. She'll be chairing a panel of experts and community members. Their goal, to send a message to the Prime Minister about the province's role in Canada.
The Alberta Next panel will put Albertans in the driver's seat. It will give them the rightful opportunity to decide how Alberta can become stronger and more sovereign within a united Canada. It will give the people who live, work, and raise families in our great province the opportunity to share their voices, their values, and their ideas. What we hear will help us map out Alberta's future.
But could this panel push Alberta further away from Confederation? The CBC's Jason Markusoff was at that announcement. He joins me now from Calgary. Hey there, Jason.
Hey, Catherine.
So Alberta had another panel 5 years ago after a previous Liberal victory. What is different about this panel?
So a lot of people might feel this as deja vu. After the 2019 election, where Albertans were disgruntled that Justin Trudeau got his second term, Jason Kenney was then the premier, launched this fair deal panel to say we need a fair deal in Alberta. It came back. It was a kind of a big airing of grievances tour around the province. A lot of people were very, theories about equalization, about fairness in Confederation. It came back recommending that Alberta pull out of pension plan, police force, changes to equalization, changes to tax collection, none of which really happened. So this is a lot of deja vu for people. This time, Danielle Smith's going to cast out for these same panels. She's chairing it herself, which is different. Last time it was Preston Manning, a former politician, doing it, so that lends it a bit more gravitas. But she's going to be casting about for solutions and has suggested that some of them could lead to referendum questions next year, not separation. That would be sort of separate, but she is suggesting that maybe Albertans will be asked if they want to remove themselves from RCMP or the Canada Pension Plan.
Yeah, but those questions, it's sort of hard to imagine them existing in isolation from the conversation right now about a separatist sentiment in Alberta. So how do you see those two things interacting?
Well, they might not even be acting in isolation on the same ballot because, as you've probably heard, Danielle Smith has made it much easier for Albertans to launch a petition drive to launch their own separation referendum, which could well happen as soon as this fall or this summer. So it's theoretical that the separation referendum could be alongside a question asking, do you want to remove yourself from the pension? Do you want to remove yourself from federal tax collection somehow? So it's going to be weird that people are going to be asked, could be asked at the same time, do you want to leave the country? And also, if not, do you want to do these other lesser things? I'm not sure how that will play with the anti-Ottawa psychology of some Albertans, but it'll probably confuse a lot of them.
It's certainly going to be fascinating. So fascinating that we want to talk more about it. So, Jason, I'm going to ask you to stay with us. We're going to bring in the rest of the Power panel now to discuss this. Emily Nicolas is a columnist for Le Devoir. Michelle Cadario was Deputy Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Paul Martin. And here with me in studio is Kate Harrison, a conservative political analyst. Hello, everybody. Kate, since so much of this does have to do with sort of politics around the conservative movement, I'll start with you. Where is this going to take us, I guess, is the question. Like what Jason was talking about there, the interplay between these questions that are sort of a path for Alberta that strikes out within Canada versus just, walking away from the deal, as it were.
Yeah, I think it is prudent and smart to put some structure around this, what is largely a very emotionally driven issue and a charged issue that we've seen play out in 2019. We saw it play out after this election and in the lead up to. I think it makes sense to try and funnel some of that discontent over the way the province and the people there perceive they've been treated by Ottawa into something that is solutions oriented and also grounded by professionals and elected leaders that I would observe to have a fair bit of credibility and skin in the game in terms of keeping Alberta part of the fabric of Canada. So I think that it's always good for governments to be listening to their people. Premier Smith has a bit of an unenviable task here in terms of trying to bridge a couple of different constituencies, some that are more motivated than others in terms of this question around succession. And I think that the way that she's going about it, as opposed to just leaving it to referenda and providing, frankly, a little bit of leadership that she is invested in by being a part of this panel, I think that will demonstrate to the constituencies at play, that she's trying to hear them out directly and provide a bit more of a solutions-oriented outcome here.
Michelle, I do want to bring you in here, but I just want to give folks a bit of a sense of some of the names on this panel. So obviously the Premier chairing it herself, Rebecca Schultz, Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, is one of the panel members. We have names like Trevor Toome, who people will know from University of Calgary, weighs in on economic policy often. The President of the Business Council of Alberta. There is the President of Questair Energy. So a range of folks. Michelle, one of the things that is interesting in all of this to me is the role that Danielle Smith plays. Kate was talking about it there, but the extent to which she becomes an advocate for Alberta remaining, how vocal she becomes about Alberta remaining in Canada at this moment, because she's the one who made it easier for these referenda to go ahead in the first place. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, so I think Kate kind of nailed it. I think that the Premier is finding herself in a very difficult position. She's got members of her caucus who feel very strongly on a bunch of issues, and they don't necessarily all agree with each other. And so when that happens, and we've seen that Alberta Conservatives are not shy about changing leaders at certain times, and so I think that this is likely an effort to get ahead of it. There's never anything wrong with politicians going out and listening to what people have to say. I think it's going to be really important, and we'll see how this goes, that also the information about all of these issues is also provided. That, you know, many people can have a lot of thoughts on the Canada Pension Plan and, you know, might have heard different things. But it's an incredibly complex system, and it is something that, was put together and forged together to be able to provide support for all Canadians across the country. And so in that kind of a thing, is the information going to be available where you really dig in and understand what it is, how people give in, you know, how transfers to provinces actually work in good times and in bad times for the different provinces. And that it's and that nothing is quite so easy as just kind of a yes no necessarily on a plebiscite. So I hope that if they're taking this on, that they're doing it in a very in-depth way. I hope that there's a lot of information available to the public in easily accessible and also in a very digestible form. And so, then, allow the conversation to kind of occur in hopefully a way that's not overly divisive, but in some way can somehow find a way to be actually constructive.
Emily, goodness knows Quebec knows a thing or two about referendum questions. What are your thoughts about what the path forward on this looks like?
There is a way in which I think in Canadian mindsets we associate the word referendum with sovereignty because of Quebec history, while really they can be referendums on anything. And I think what Jason said about that was really important as a reminder. But there is still a sovereigntist movement brewing in Alberta, and Danielle Smith is trying to navigate in that context as well. And so it's very tricky. Let's say that there are pros and cons to her being directly involved in the process. There's the pros of, more participatory democracy and her listening to people. But there's obviously the cons of when your job is to do the politics and it's not an independent consultation of any sort. It might look like you are having answers and looking for questions, essentially, or just that you already have in mind something that you want to do, and that the consultation process is something that's there to rubber stamp your political agenda that was already planned. And so it's very tricky for a sitting premier to be chairing or to be heading a process like this directly. There's also always question that journalists can ask about anything that is said in said commission or in said consultation, in terms of whether or not the premier agrees with it or not, because there is not that element of distance from the process. And so I understand that it's her way of saying, I'm going to be listening to the population and trying to salvage very tense partisan relationship. But at the same time, it's very much a double-edged sword the way I see it. And depending as well or also I'm saying it as a double-edged sword, let's say, informed by some of Quebec histories when it comes to that kind of more participatory democracies as well. It needs to be done in a way that's very, very smart.
Jason, what is your sense of Albertans' willingness to engage with a process like this? Like, how much appetite do you think there is in the province to have these kind of conversations with the Premier and this spectrum of folks?
So if we go back to the Fair Deal panel 5 years ago, very few people attended. A few people who believe in those kind of firewall, get Ottawa out of my face mentality came up. When it's the Premier here, to Emily's point, it's going to raise it. The raise the stakes much more. I mean, a few weeks ago, we saw a meeting in a small town of Fort Macleod, Alberta, down near where there's a proposal for a big coal mining project, which the province has more or less approved exploration for. And hundreds of people showed up and very angry, heated. So I'd imagine at any of these, when it's almost open mic night in front of the Premier, you're going to get people who are angry at her over healthcare, angry at her over teacher negotiations. On the other side, people who have questions about, and we've heard this asked at town halls with the Premier there before, about chemtrails, about water fluoridation, about separatism. So these could get really unruly and wild if they're not really managed well. Having some people like Trevor Toome, the economist, and Adam Legg from the Business Council might ground it in some economic reality and with some hard facts, as Michelle said. But I can see the potential for these to go off the rails pretty quickly and become an interesting political spectacle.